Authentic Life with Annie Lieb. So before we start, for those who are either watching this on live stream or those who are in the live Zoom audience, please enter your name and what city you're coming from. If you want to network and continue the conversation, add your LinkedIn so that you can grow your LinkedIn community, or what I call you guys, my raindrops. For those watching this live stream, once again on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter, we want you in this conversation as well. So tell us where you're coming from, what country, what city, and feel free to connect with each other, ask questions in the comments. You're just as much in this conversation as Annie and myself. And I'll try to check the comments on LinkedIn and the other platforms if I can. For those who are new to Community of Seven, this is a microlearning. And the purpose of these calls is really to help our listeners elevate their mindset and skill set by bringing leading authors, coaches, executives, founders, and subject matter experts. Our goal is really to democratize leadership development for all. Not many of us can afford the executive training, which can cost upwards of $500 an hour. That's why we make these microlearnings open to the public. And for those who can afford it, that's why we feature these amazing coaches and leaders so that you can reach out to them as well. And this is why we also have a global audience. Whether you're watching from Seoul, Korea, Kingston, Jamaica, Vietnam, Manila, the UK or the USA, we want to democratize knowledge and uplift our global community. I want to thank Community of Seven core members and supporter members for supporting these talks with your membership dues so that we can help more people around the world. Our goal at Community of Seven is to train over 1 million people in the next decade. So thank you for making this micro learning and joining the movement. So what's a micro learning? It's a training and development that focuses on offering bite-sized small pieces with just the right amount of information to help learners achieve a goal. Most importantly, it's not just a webinar where you passively listen. We want you in this conversation, in the comments, and we actually want you to take 1, 2, 3 actions after hanging up this call. We actually want you to be participating in your own development. So, implement at least one of these concepts that Annie's going to be going over within the next 24 hours. And it's not going to be graded, but I think you will personally benefit if you are active in your own learning process. So before we start, a few questions. We always start our calls with a check-in. So if you can kind of go on top right-hand side, and for those who are watching this in the live Zoom audience, if you can turn on your videos, that would be so awesome. We love seeing your beautiful faces, and it helps the speakers be able to kind of feel like you're a part of the conversation. So turn on the videos if you can. If you don't, that's fine as well. So once again, top right-hand side, put yourself on gallery mode. If you are in the live Zoom audience, you should be in a grid format. So if you are watching this via live stream, LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube, you can just type in yes or no to my question. For those in the live Zoom audience, raise both hands if the answer is yes. Got it? Quick question. First question. Do you do work that fulfills you? Or are you figuring out what fulfills you? Do you feel your personal life fulfills you as much or more than your professional life, and vice versa? Do you feel you have a firm grasp of your core values? Do you reassess and examine your core values at least once a year? Do you feel you're living your life based on your core values? Has the past 2.5, 3 years with the pandemic changed the way you live your life? Okay, thank you all. If you want, put this on speaker mode for those who are in the live Zoom audience so you just see me. The focus on today's microlearning is how to live your best life and most authentic life with Annie Lieb. For those who have been kind of watching this for a while, you know that, finding purpose and values, your core values, and living your authentic life is kind of core to my journey, right? And what I want from this community. During the past 2.5, 3 years of this pandemic, with mass layoffs and then the great resignation, it's really forced us to take a collective pause to re-examine our lives. Many of us, including myself, might be able to identify our core values, but we might not necessarily be able to go to the next step, which is actually to live our core values, not only in our career choices, but our relationships with significant others, our friendships, and even our self-care. To reframe purpose, we can call it a lot of things. For me, it's what matters most to you. Other people call it what they love or what they value the most. Whatever you call your core value, it's basically the essence of what drives and motivates you. The only problem is that some of us know our core values, but we're not able to go to that next side in terms of actually living it. And the great thing about values is that once we get it right, it should provide us as a kind of a personal code of conduct that informs all parts of our lives, right? How we spend our time, the mate we choose, the career path we take, and on and on and on. Once we're congruent with our values, we can find happiness and contentment. When we are aligned with our core values, we can experience fulfillment. But as I said, first we need to crystallize our core values. And I know for me, with the pandemic, I was able to really crystallize what was important to me. And for those of you that have been on my journey from the very beginning, those four are, my family and friends, or my friends who are my chosen family, my faith, helping others, and freedom. So these are the four things in my life that I value the most. And if I lost everything in the material world, and if I still had these four things, I would still be content. And, one of the things I realized, early on in the pandemic is that it wasn't just about understanding my values, it was about living it. And I realized that I had all of these jobs and I pursued all of these different career objectives that necessarily weren't aligned with my core values. And it took me a while to understand that in order for me to really find happiness, I needed to actually live my core values in everything I did. So I had my dream job. I was working at Fortune magazine, but I was working till 10, 11 o'clock at night and seeing my daughter, my husband out on the weekends. And if I say that the thing that's most important to me is my family, and I don't see them, there's a disconnect. No matter how much of a dream job I had, it didn't align with my core values. Does that make sense? And the other thing was freedom. I didn't really have freedom in any of these jobs I had. I recently, every year since last year, as a business owner, I take July and August off. And people are always like, that is crazy. But that is my commitment for freedom. I don't make money during those July, August times, and that's okay with me. Because what I do in those times is I spend a month seeing my mother, who lives in Los Angeles, the other side of the country, or I spend it with my daughter, taking her to swim classes. And it aligns with my core value of freedom. But here's the thing, your core values are going to change. When I was in my early 20s, graduating from college, my only core value, or what was important to me, was making money. Why? Because I grew up poor. And so if you don't have a roof over your head, if you're just trying to pay for rent or food, you're not going to have these lofty core values. Your core value is just to survive. And so there's that understanding that your core values are going to shift. And, in terms of my core values, one of the things when I was younger that I really wanted to achieve was being able to support my mother financially, because she never made much money growing up. She made $10,000 a year as a hairdresser. And so once I was able to support her financially, money no longer became important to me, right? Your core values are going to change depending on your life circumstance. Now that I'm a mother, my core value has changed and my family is front and center. So excited to start this call and really excited to introduce Annie. But quick activity before we begin. In the comments, if you are in the Zoom audience, do it in the chat, but don't start until I say send. Just type it in right now. For those who are in the Zoom, watching in the live stream, LinkedIn, Facebook, etc., I want you to type this in the comments. Don't press send till I tell you. What prevents most people from living their best and most authentic life? Type it in. What prevents most people from living their best and most authentic life? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Press send. So fear, money, what others think of themselves. I see a lot of fear. So this is kind of interesting. I actually just posted today. As you guys know, I post a lot on LinkedIn. And one of the things I posted was, ride through your fear until it becomes, like your day-to-day, kind of like where it becomes second nature. And all of us experience fear when we're first starting a business. For me, I give you this example of public speaking. I used to be deathly afraid of being in the public eye or even speaking, doing presentations. So I would always be the person that made the deck for the CMO or the C-suite executive, and I would be behind the scenes, right? I would make things happen behind the scenes, but I would never be front and center. And I always told myself, well, I'm just not a public speaker, right? And I realized that in order for me to achieve my values, which is helping people, freedom, right? I had to get over that fear. So now I do public speaking for a living. Companies pay me to speak and train their staff. I moderate panels and conferences all over the world, and I get paid to speak. And now my fear of public speaking, it's not a fear because this is just part of who I am. So whatever fear that you have, whether starting a business or asking someone out or whatever it is, right? Move past that fear until it becomes just part of your life. Oh, I'm a business owner. I'm married and I have a family. I'm XYZ, right? Live through your fear until it becomes you. So I am so excited to introduce today's guest. Let me pin her right now. Because I'm also the technician for this event. So I'm so excited to introduce Ann Lee. Ann is an experienced executive coach and businesswoman who has had her sole purpose to really align leaders with their most authentic selves while unlocking their ability to create huge impact in the world. She helps companies understand that when you take care of your people take care of your business. Her method and methodology for coaching leaders has been cultivated from her, decades of experience in the business world and her extensive personal experience healing folks. So her widespread coaching work spans across industries and has brought praise from companies for the folks that she has impacted. Her unique methodology is captured in her trademark Breathe framework, which has an intense focus on the identification of your personal life purpose, value system, and core leadership traits. Annie has helped clients realign their actions and mindset, unlocking their hidden potential so that they can recognize and manage their emotional barriers that keep them from achieving their full authentic self. Her methodology is captured in her book, Begin with the Breath. So drum roll, round of applause for Annie Lieb. So Annie, You had a huge pivot. You were in the pharmaceutical industry for years, and then you got your executive MBA at the young age of 40. You were, what made you do that transition to becoming like an executive coach? Tell us about your story.
How much time do you have? No.
Lots of time.
Thank you. First of all, I have to say thank you all for being here. I'm seeing many names that I've, conversed with over the past couple of years being on LinkedIn, and it's just making me really happy. So thank you for being here, and thank you for having me, Lan. I'm honored. So my story is I was in pharmaceutical sales and business development for years. And I started to feel, I was working for big corporations. I started to feel like a number, and like I wasn't a person. I wasn't being seen and I wasn't being heard. And I wanted to make more impact. So I, in fact, was the leader that I coach now. So that's part of my experience that I bring to the table is I was the person that you are coming to me. And I just was really, you said so many things. I wrote down alignment, freedom, core values. These are the things I was not in touch with. I didn't understand what they were. I certainly didn't know how to identify them. And I certainly didn't know how to apply them to my life. And I started on this journey, starting with getting my EMBA in Philadelphia at St. Joe's. And I left the corporate world and decided to go to school full time so I could get my MBA very quickly in a year and a half. And my cohort and I got very close. It's like, I don't know if anybody's experienced this, but it's kind of like going through war together. I mean, we're executives. We have bills to pay. We have kids. It's not the same as getting your master's right after college, which is hard as well, but this is a different experience. We were in the trenches together, and they started to say to me, Annie, like, you're the glue of the group. You're the coach of the group. You need to start a business. So 2020 happens, COVID hits, and I'm starting to think about, I have a consulting firm. I'm starting to think about what I can really do with this MBA, right? Like, what am I going to do? And I started coaching people for free in my cohort, and it was becoming a little business that I had in my name. And people were giving me a lot of accolades for doing this coaching. And I created this modality called the breath framework, which I can get into later, but that's an acronym. And it's what I teach people. It's a curriculum that I go through in about 6 months. And I take them from their begin all the way through to their heal. And I can explain what that all means. But it's exactly what I did on my journey, Lam. It's what I did. I started somewhere. I had to figure out where I started. I went through, I reclaimed my power. I excavated my core values. I learned how to allow. I figured out how to go through, and I healed. And that's my coaching modality. And that's sort of what happened. I got on LinkedIn and I started being this really authentic version of myself. Like, I even surprised myself, and I just was talking about struggles and what am I going to do with my life, and really got some executives, high-level executives, to believe in me at these big corporations. And that's really what started my journey as a coach. They believed in me. I started coaching them. This was a really impactful modality I was using, and it's become this business. So that's what brings me to present day.
So a lot of the comments we got in terms of what prevents people from living their core values is like 90% of it was fear.
Mm-hmm.
How did you go past the fear to go from being a corporate exec to now like an executive coach? Like that gap. How did you fill that gap in terms of riding through the fear?
I had it for a while. I won't lie, but I remember the day that I decided, and that's the key word. I made a choice to lean into this business and say, nothing is going to stop me. This will be successful. I haven't gotten any funding. I don't have loans. I don't have $1 on a credit card. This is all from my savings and the money that I make. Like, this is bootstrapped, the true definition. And I will tell you that I remember the day when I said, I am going to lean so hard into this. There's no way I won't be successful. I believe so much in what I'm doing and healing people and getting these executives out of this stuck place that I was in. I want to help people and share with them what I've done to become this authentic version of me. And that day, I went to my parents, because I respect my dad a tremendous amount. He's like my role model in business. And I said, I don't want to go back to the corporate world. I'm an entrepreneur and I want to lean into this business. And he was like, I showed him a business plan and everything. And he was like, go for it. I don't have anything to add. You have it together. Do it. And it hasn't always been easy. Some months it was struggling to make ends meet, but when you really believe in yourself and you surround yourself with the right people, you can embrace your fear. I don't always say, we might not be able to overcome all of our fears. They might remain in us. I don't like public speaking either. I don't know that I've overcome that, but I've sort of embraced it. This is who I am, and it's not my favorite thing, but I got to do it. And there's a lot of fears like that in my life.
Do it afraid. Do it afraid.
That expression, fake it till you make it, is kind of works sometimes. It worked for me for a while.
Yeah. Two quotes come to mind just from this conversation. One is from Queen Bey, Beyonce. And you've seen me quote, for those who follow my post, you've seen this before. I don't like to gamble, but if there's one thing I'm willing to bet on, it's myself. And a lot of the going past the fear is betting on yourself, even though the odds seem slim, even though everything seems daunting. The other one I think of is, it's slipping my mind who said the quote, but it's essentially everything you want is on the other side of fear. So if you want happiness, if you want love, if you want your dream career, you have to get past that fear, right? Because we all feel the fear. But the difference between people who succeed and people who stay stagnant is they go past that fear. And I always kind of think of it too as babies walking. I remember when my daughter was walking, she would fall and she would just get right back up. She was fearless, right? And just think if we did that to ourselves, where every time we fell, we just laid there and just in defeat. You know what I mean? So part of it is we can learn so much from babies, because they will fall, they will bruise themselves, but they get right back up, right? So earlier you kind of talked about the importance of core values. How do you figure out your core values? It took me 40 plus years to figure out my core values, but part of it is that I thought I knew what my core values, but I really didn't sit down and actually say, what are the things that are most important to me? And it's funny because whenever I work with executives and leaders or people who are become core members, the first thing I always ask them is, what are you passionate about? What brings you joy? 90% of the time, they just look at me, and these are powerful executives and leaders in their industry, and they're like, but they could tell me what their quarterly goals are. They can tell me what their mission statement for their company is, but they can't tell me what makes them happy. So how do you expect to move towards what you're happy, what you love, if you can't even identify that, right? So tell me, tell this community, how do you find your core values? How do you figure out what is the core values for those who are trying to figure it out? What does it mean?
So I can't give away all my tricks, and I do have a couple tricks in my coaching sessions, but I will tell you that it starts with fulfillment for me. So the word happy, I am careful with, because happiness to me is not a state of mind. Happiness comes in moments. And I've talked about this a lot on LinkedIn, but when you can close your eyes, and everybody close your eyes for 1 second. It's uncomfortable for a minute, but just close your eyes and think about the last blip of a moment that crossed your time of day. You had this blip of a moment that you really felt fulfilled. It could be 10 years ago. It could be 10 minutes ago. When you can find those moments in your life and gather them up, you will be able to uncover some of your core values, because it's what fulfills you. It's what fills you. It's what gives you purpose and meaning. Core values are such a big part of my life that I have them tattooed on my body. Like, love is on my wrist. Truth is in Hebrew on my wrist. Like, this freedom land, you love this. It's right here. Like, it started off, I started off as scared to death for my dad to see my tattoos. And now they're like on my wrist. And like, it's
how many core values? I hope you don't have like 2 million, because then your body would be full of tattoos.
My core values, no, that's all. That's it. My core values are love, freedom, perseverance, trust, and truth. So I have done a lot of what I call excavating to find them. And it was a lot of figuring out what made me feel whole and what made me feel fulfilled. and what those moments I could grasp onto and put them in my pocket for later when I'm not so happy and say, I'm going to feel that again. Let me taste that. Let me smell that. Let me feel that again. What makes me, what lights me up? And the things I just listed are the things that light me up. So I embed them in everything that I do. So that's what I try to do with my clients, is help them uncover what makes them whole.
Awesome. And so, we kind of talked about values. The other thing we talked, that is a focus of this conversation is finding your authentic self. And I know you used to have a podcast, and one of the things you talked about was having a attitude. Can you explain to our audience what an attitude is and the origins and why everyone on this call should have an attitude?
So attitude came out because I was just like joking around one day with somebody, and I said, like, you have a really bad attitude. Like, obviously there's a play on words with attitude. And he's like, you should make that a hashtag. And I'm like, I'm going to make it like a brand. So that's when I started my brand on LinkedIn, and I did this attitude thing for a while. And what it is to me is truly stepping into your truth. So just to go back to what I was saying, when I did this excavation process and I figured out my core values, I really leaned into those words. How can I embed love and freedom and perseverance and trust and truth in everything I do? With my kids, with my relationships, with work, with my business, all of it. How do I embed that every day? And I'm far from perfect, and I make many mistakes. But what I do is come back when I lay my head on the pillow at night. I said, this is my authentic self, and it's a badass self. And that's attitude. Knowing yourself, knowing who you are, figuring out why you're here, what your purpose and your meaning is here. And that takes some time. That's not something I woke up and figured out. This was a journey, and still is. I'm constantly, like you said earlier, I don't know if we were even on live yet, but we're works in progress. We're always evolving. That's why at the end of my breath framework, H is for heal. It's not healed. It's heal. It's present tense. It's ongoing. So I want people to know that this is, it might be overwhelming, and it might be like, I have no idea what my core values are. It's like, find somebody that you can really relate to, that you feel comfortable and safe with, and talk about it. You have to talk about yourself, talk about what fulfills you, what lights your fire, what gets you out of bed in the morning. When you can figure that out, you can understand what your core values are.
Yeah.
And knowing that is attitude, I guess.
It's so true that it takes work, right? And it's funny because I think about my 20s and my 30s, and I was literally soul searching, and I was like, what's my purpose? Like I'd ask that all the time, and I just couldn't figure it out, right? And I remember one time I was in between jobs, and I went to Costa Rica on this surf camp with like a whole bunch of girls, women. And my bunk mate, we had this conversation about purpose. And she was like, there's some people who find their purpose early on. They're lawyers or doctors, and they find their purpose. And there's some people who come home to their purpose and their passion. And for the longest time, I thought I was just the latter case, that I would just have jobs that I'm good at, that pays me well, but they're just jobs, and I would come home to my passion and purpose. And it was only in this past 2-3 years where I was like, F that. I spend, most adults spend 60-70% of their lives, or 30%, at work. So shouldn't you find a profession that you're passionate about and excited about, and that you find purpose? If you're going to spend so much part of your life in working, make sure you do something that you love. And it wasn't until I was like, F that, I'm going to try to find my passion. And I literally dug into that. And I realized that my job had to align with my personal passions. So for the folks who are on this call, I don't know if you can kind of, not have an answer, but what I see a lot is that executives who are really great at their jobs, but their marriages are failing, they don't see their kids hate them, or you have people who are great in the home life, but financially they might not be doing well, or professionally they're not happy. I mean, how do you have both? How do you kind of align both? Because I really believe that you need to kind of have that intersection. And it's not going to ever be 100% perfect. I always think about Oprah and her saying, you can have everything you want, not just all at once, right? And so, how do we kind of live a life where there's a little bit of balance? Because you're never going to have true balance, but how do you kind of live an authentic life and a life of purpose professionally, but also personally?
I think that's a great question. And I think there's a couple different answers. But first, I want to say that, yes, some people find their passion and purpose. And sometimes your passion and purpose finds you, which is what happened to me. So I didn't stumble upon it. It found me.
But pausing you for a second, there's things that you needed to do in order for that purpose to find you.
Totally.
Right?
Totally.
Because some people, their purpose could be like purpose, and they'll be like, I got, I have a work call, or I have back-to-back calls, or I'm running after this. And your purpose could be like purpose,
blinking,
but you're never going to see it. Right?
So you said a really important word, and this is huge in my practice, and that's alignment. When you can figure out how to come into alignment in your core, which I don't mean to keep reiterating this, but core values is huge for me. When you can find that alignment of who you are, you will figure out your purpose and everything gets better. Your work gets easier. You like things better. You're happier in your life. You're more fulfilled because you're aligned. There's a whole alignment process that is part of this work in this journey that I did personally and that I help my clients with, that helps them to figure out who they are and who their most authentic selves are. And when you can figure that out, you come into alignment and every part of your life gets better.
I love that. Michelle Cordy, hi Michelle, in the quotes has a great quote. Love what you do and never work a day in your life. And I think that's kind of what we're talking about, right? If you pay attention to she also says, pay attention to the signs and what resonates with you, and that kind of gets you closer to figuring that out. So another question I have is, how do you make sure that you are living a life of your core values and purpose, and not subconsciously basing it on other people's values, your parents, society, expectations for you? Because I'm in an Asian immigrant family, and the only three jobs are doctor, lawyer, doctor, lawyer, and engineer, right? And otherwise you're a failure. So I remember one time my mom was like, oh, well, you need to be, you have to marry a doctor or whatnot. And I was like, forget marrying a doctor. I'll marry the garbage man and become a doctor, right? So, and I think about some of the decisions that I've made earlier in my career. And I remember actually talking to an executive too. She's very high up, C-suite executive. And, she was trying to figure out what to do next in her career. And she remembered a friend had said, and she wanted to start her own business. And she just said, someone had told her, well, I think you have one more, you're not ready, you're not ready to retire yet, right? Like starting her own business or consulting would be retiring. You have one more corporate gig in you. And she thought about it, and she was like, what does that mean, right? And so for a second, even though she knew she truly wanted to start her own business, she let that seep into her head, right? So how do you make sure that you're living your own values and not what other people want from you, or society wants from you, or prestige or whatnot?
I have so much to answer, but it's like, it's all okay. So first of all, I relate to you so much in that, like, I have a very old school father who's like, what do you mean you're not going to have a job with a salary and a 401k? Like, I don't understand. Like, that's his mentality. He's 75 years old. He wants me provided for. I'm like, well, because I'm going to provide for me. Like, it's a different it's a generational thing. First of all. Second of all, how do you know you're living your values? You have to do the work. You have to surround yourself with the right support, and you have to, Michelle just said it great, really quick. It popped up on my screen. You have to put the noise out of your way. There's always noise. People constantly say to me, like, oh, how's your side gig? I'm like, my side gig that supports my family? Like, are you seeing, like, really? This isn't a side gig. This isn't a side hustle. And even if it were, like, it's nothing to look down upon, like we have to have an open respect for people and what they want to do. And this lights my fire. This is absolutely 1000% what I am meant to do. And where I'm supposed to be and how I'm supposed to be doing it and with whom I'm supposed to be, like, all of the things. But it took a while, and there's still noise, and there's still fears in me, and there's still doubts that come up. And, you have to be able to keep fighting and have that grit and perseverance and not give up on yourself. You have to bet on yourself. You have to take that plunge and bet on yourself. And I'm here to tell you, no one helped me. Like I didn't get handouts, not that like taking help is bad. It's not, but it's not like I was given this on a silver platter, but it's what I believe in. Like, not only me, but this business and impacting leaders and helping guide people and find their authentic selves. All the places that I was lacking, I want to help people find. And so, like, how do I align with that? I do the meditation. I do the journaling. I do the work. I have a coach. I don't ever stop doing the work. And there are days when I get out of alignment. I will miss journaling. I will miss meditation. I won't be talking to the right people that understand where I'm, how centered in love I am. And they're like, what are you talking? Like, they don't get me. And I'm out of alignment and I'm all whacked. And then I have to bring myself back to center, because this is what I do. I have to lead by example. So, I kind of answered all over the map, but hopefully that answers your questions a little bit about just like keeping yourself in alignment and centered and figuring out what your values are and sticking to them.
I love that. And so I think we kind of covered this, but if you can get a little bit more in depth, tell us more about your breathe framework, how it works, and just like how can some of the folks, incorporate some of the, I know you have like clients that you
Sure.
don't want to give everything, but like this, the basic, what are the top things that the folks who are kind of listening need to kind of know about this breathe framework and how they can kind of incorporate some of the concepts in their day-to-day life?
So let me give you a quick background on where breath framework came from. So just to be really personal, I'll tell you this because that's just who I am. So in 2015, I'm standing in an auto body shop signing my divorce papers in an auto body shop because that's where the notary was. And I'm like, I have a 2.5 and 4.5-year-old. And I'm like, this is it. Like, I'm stripped of everything. And I saw a Ralph Waldo Emerson poem on the wall. I kid you not, in an auto
shop.
What? Talk about signs. Talk about seeing the signs, right? And it says something about breath. And I thought to myself, I can never forget the moment. And it was not a good time. I was sobbing, even though I wanted it. It doesn't matter. It's still a horrible time. And I said, you can take everything from me, but you can't take my breath. That's mine. I can be left with nothing, but I will always have my breath. And that's when I turned on my heel and went to a tattoo shop and I got the word breath tattooed on my body. That's the only other one I have. And I got that really small on my hip. I was like, it's for me, it's mine. And then fast forward, as I built my life back brick by brick from 2015 to 2018 and started to really come into my own and find myself a little bit. That's when I decided, okay, how am I going to teach people what I've learned in 2020? I'm going to create the breath framework. And that's where B is for begin where you are. R is reclaim your power. E is excavate your core values. A is allow, not control. T is through, not around. And H is heal or healing. And I have developed this curriculum and really, like, I'm obviously open to having a consult or a talk with any of you. I'm not like, you have to be my client. Like, please come to me and we'll meet and talk and I'll give you some quick tidbits on some things you can do to work on yourself. But it really starts with like some silent time, creating some protecting your space, making a bubble for yourself, even if it's 5 minutes. I say to my clients, I don't care if you're journaling about chicken McNuggets or your childhood trauma. It doesn't matter to me. I just want you to get a pen and a paper and I want you to just write for 5 to 10 minutes a day. for a week and then come back to me and tell me what you've discovered in that week. I have yet to have somebody come back to me and say, I didn't discover anything. Even the hardest, like most closed people that I've met that are just not willing and open-minded were like, I'm surprised by stuff that I wrote. It's just, that's just one thing. And I know it's like, people toss that around journal, but like, seriously, be with yourself, be present in that moment. So much of our lives is on this treadmill. Take 10 minutes of your day to just be with you. You will be surprised what you find. And that's the way to find your begin. That's how I help clients find where they're starting. And that's a great starting point.
I love that. Have you ever read the book by Hal Elrod? It's called Miracle Morning, but that was definitely a game changer for me. And he has this morning routine called SAVERS. And so it's an acronym. S is for silence, meditation, or prayer. A is for affirmations. B is for visualization, visualizing your day. E is for exercise. R is for reading. And for folks who are watching this, you could be reading for 5 minutes. It could be one page. It seems overwhelming, but you can kind of modify it. So it only takes 30 minutes in the morning. And the last one is S, scribing, and the importance of journaling and writing things down. And one of the things that I really got into a habit of is writing down what I'm grateful for. And it could be a good meal. It could be my daughter making me laugh. It could be the fact that my daughter made the swim team, which she did recently. And it's just being grateful for everything that you have. And sometimes we need to, when we put it on paper, it's an intentional act. And I think finding your purpose and finding your authentic self is a purposeful act. And most of us live our lives like it's just going to come to us. My dream life is going to come to me. My dream job is going to come to me. My purpose is going to come to me. It doesn't just come to you. You need to seek it, right? And I think that's kind of one of the things that your breathe exercise kind of does. It's really encompassing everything that your wants and your desires are, and then kind of moving towards that and giving you the space to actually live that. So I'm going to kind of go into the comments and open this up to the audience right now. And I'm going to read some stuff while I let people prepare. Michelle, society has ingrained in us to go, 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 when what we really need to do is just be in the present moment. Mindy, thanks you for sharing. Jennifer, Jennifer Smith, we need to be intentional with ourselves. And Michelle says also, Annie, your energy and passion is evident. Thank you for that. Sin, I think that work-life balance slogan is outdated. Integration in all areas of our lives is best. Here to everyone on that call. So folks, anyone in the live Zoom audience have a question for Annie? This is like, you usually don't get an opportunity to talk to someone like Annie. So any
Ask me
questions
anything. I'm an open book.
Exactly. Or I might just call on some people who are regulars. David Hansen. David, do you want to unmute and ask a question? He's also a core member, so I'm putting him in the spot rightfully. And I know I've talked to David so David is amazing. He was very successful in retail, and now he wants to kind of start a journey in terms of, meditation. So David, what's your question?
Well, hi, Annie.
I've done this to David many times. There's one time on a core call.
It's nice to see you live. We talk all the time on LinkedIn. Yeah. So it's like I'm seeing him live and in person. This is
But what's hilarious is that so he's in one of my core groups, and I was running late for a meeting, and usually I do a centering exercise with my core groups, and I was like 5-10 minutes late, and I emailed him or texted him. I was like, David, can you do the centering exercise for the first 5-10 minutes? And he was like, what? I'm always putting David on the spot, and part of that is I know he can handle it. So David, what's your question?
Well, thanks for pushing me out of my comfort zone once again. But and this is so cool to see the two of you together, because both of you are actually very inspirational to me. And you, Lan, have had a lot to do with me uncovering my core values. And one of the hardest things about that exercise was there's so many things that I value that it was really hard for me to narrow it down to just a core few. So I would like to know Annie's thoughts about how do you do that? How do you narrow down your values into some core ones? And then also I'm interested in how you can monetize what you're passionate about and keep it a passion. I think of an artist, for example, that they do their art because they love it, but when it's their job and it's their source of income, it might take the joy out of it. So I'd love to know your thoughts about both of those things.
That was an amazing question, by the way,
It
David.
really was, and kind of a stumper. Okay, so first, I'm going to give you guys a little resource, a free resource you may have heard of, you may have not. I'm not going to do it until the end, but remind me and I'll put it in the chat. And you can take a free assessment about your character strengths. And they are very, very, very closely related to your core values. So it's an assessment that I give. It's just free. You can find it online and I'll put it in the link for you. It doesn't take very long. And when you see where you're ranked, and I want you to remember that the things lower on the list, they're not weaknesses. They're just not strengths that are popping out at your surface right now. So keep that in mind. This is not a strengths weaknesses test, but it will show you a lot of where your strengths, it highlights what you're strong in. And what that does is it kind of tells a little bit more about who you are. It tells your story a little bit. And you can think about those words and how they resonate with you and see if any of them might make you feel more fulfilled when you feel those and when you experience those, and those are part of your core values. So that's something that I review in my coaching sessions, but it's a good resource. How do you monetize what you love to do? I have to tell you that I said this in the beginning. I mean, I've never run a business before. And that was the hardest part, that learning curve of just figuring out how to make this a business, how to value yourself enough to say, no, this is what I cost. And if you can't afford it, I might not be the coach for you. Or, having people go, what do you mean that's what it costs? Or I've had senior executives say you're not charging enough when I first started. I mean, that was like embarrassing. Like, what do you mean? Like, how do you even say that to somebody? But they valued me. So figuring out your value and your worth is so super important. And then, like I said, that perseverance and grit and leaning into it and not giving up on yourself. But like, we can't all monetize everything that we feel passionate about. So talking to people that do it, that have become successful coaches for me, and getting a really successful coach for myself was super important for my journey. Like, if I didn't have those leaders leading me and guiding me, there's a lot that I stumbled through and made mistakes and figured out on my own. But if let's say it's for shits and giggles, let's say it's basket weaving. Okay. That's your passion and you want to monetize it, right? Like, find the greatest basket weaver ever in the country and contact them. You can find anybody today. You can get a hold of anybody, contact them, figure out, Google search who does this thing that you want to do and pick their brain. It's a compliment when someone comes to me and says, how did you make a successful business? And then find the right support system around you, the people that really believe in what you're doing, and lean into them, because there are plenty of people that won't. So lean into the people that really support you and believe in what you're doing and are passionate like you are about it. That's what I did. And I did get really lucky in having some people find me on LinkedIn that are very successful, very knowledgeable, and very brilliant, and say, we believe in you. And that was a foot in the door at a couple corporations. Like, I'm not going to lie and act like this just came to my doorstep. I mean, I did the work on LinkedIn, but I had a couple, I impressed some people. So just putting yourself out there. If I didn't show up as Annie, which you see all the time, David, on LinkedIn, like, they wouldn't have said, what are you doing that's different? Like, this sounds great. Tell me more. And then introduce me to their companies. So hopefully that
I'm going to chime in just in regards to your question, David, in terms of why it's important to narrow down your core values. And part of that is kind of going back to that Oprah quote, you can have everything you want, not just all at once. So rank ordering is really important. So let me give you an example. If world travel is one of your core, being a world adventurer is one of your core values, and family is one of your values, right? You can't travel throughout the world, leave your family because there's a conflict, right? So if world travel is your number one value, leave your family, right? if your number one value is family, there's a disconnect if you are constantly leaving to explore the world and your family's at home.
You probably have some misalignment, to your
Yes.
point, with
Yeah.
your values. If those are
Exactly.
your two main core values, then I would want to talk to you a little further about why they're your two core values,
Yeah.
because they don't align.
But the rank order is really important
Yeah.
because you need to figure out what is the most important thing to you. And it can't be everything. You can't have 20, 30, these are number one for me. Because when you're able to rank order, you're able to really say, you know, so decisions that I make, like freedom, let's say financial security, my family is the most important thing to me. And one of the things I started doing, as I mentioned earlier, as an entrepreneur, was take the summers off. So I don't work in July, and I don't work in August. That's my
Yes, you
family
do.
time.
You work as a mother and a wife, but
As a mother and a wife, yes.
Yes, you do.
But I don't like work with clients,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And that's because my number one value is family. So people are like, well, you're not making money, you're not growing your business. My number one value is my family, right? I don't get to see my mom. I don't know how long my mom I have on this earth, and she has dementia and she's slowly forgetting who I am. So that's the most important thing to me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And the
bringing
truth
in,
is, if you think about what Lan's saying, the truth is it's making her better in the other 10 months of the year.
yeah.
Like it's making you be able to focus on the other parts of your life,
And
because
it's so
you're
funny
taking that
because
time off.
in the past, I would live in fear and just be like, I'm not making any revenue. I
Sure,
had
I get it.
6 contracts come in just in the month of September. Some I had to kind of turn away, right? Because I was in this mindset of, this is what's important to me, and you can wait. You know what I mean?
And they will
Yeah.
wait. If that's the right client for you, they will. That's the truth.
Any other kind of questions? We have maybe room for one more question or so. Angelica Advinsula, do you want to unmute and ask your question, or do you want me to ask your question? Angelica? Okay.
Maybe
I will
she can't
ask a
unmute.
question. I will ask a question for you. So Angelica has a question. What are some tips that you can share? What are some tips that you can share on finding those that support you? I've been burned recently by people I thought who supported and believed in me. And Angela, big hug, because I've been there.
It's happened to the best of us. Trust me on that one.
How can we kind of, and it reminds me of the famous quote, we are the average of the 5 people we spend our time with, so that it's really important to kind of find those people that are supporting and cheering for us. How do we do that?
I think I would be a poor coach if I didn't say I'd like to find out a little bit more. So maybe we can talk one-off about you specifically and what went on, because I think maybe I could pull out some threads of like what you were looking at in the wrong way, or what you saw as one thing. And it's hard to do in that general question, but I will tell you, keep saying this, I sound like a broken record, but like, people around you that support you have similar values to yours. So when you figure out your values and you can align with those around you, like the people that I surround myself with today are ones, for the most part, you can't choose all your family members, but hold on one second. Can you turn that down, please? Sorry, my daughter's listening to TikTok and it's like,
I totally relate to you right now.
I'm like, that's okay. So like the people around me, you can't choose your family all the time. And sometimes you're stuck with some people, but like the people around me understand that I'm based in love, that freedom is so important to me, that trust and truth is everything to me. And that's what I look for in a reflection of a friend or a person that I'm spending time with. So maybe you need to look a little bit. Thank you for your question. I'm sorry for your hurt. And don't give up, because everybody is not like that. So don't let them spoil for the rest of us that are really good souls that want to be supportive for you.
Yeah. And I don't know if this is a simplistic kind of viewpoint, but this is what my approach that I've taken. I've kind of divided the world into people who are givers and takers. And you can spot the takers a mile away. And in my past, I used to be in the music industry. So many takers. Sorry for anyone who's in the music industry, but you know what I'm talking about, right? And so it was when I started looking at the world in terms of who are the folks in my life that are givers. And that's who I resonate towards. And if you are with a giver, you don't have to worry about there being you know, like a healthy relationship, because givers automatically will want to give. And I think one of the things we need to learn as givers is learning how to take, right? But if you surround yourself with the right people, the givers in the world, my whole core communities that I create, they're basically all givers. They're all empathetic people. There are people who want to change the world. And I don't, it's a, when you surround yourself with the givers, everything else falls into place. So Annie, how can this community help you? How can we find you? And also, can you put in that link to that self-assessment test? Can you also put in, I know we can find you at annielee.com, I believe.
Yeah.
How else can we help you?
AnnieLeib.com, and it's LEIB. Everybody misspells it. It's just part of my, I don't know when I'm going to go back to my maiden name or I'm going to get married again. I don't know, but my married name is always misspelled. And my LinkedIn is that's my platform. That's my baby. So you can always find me on there. I put my LinkedIn address in the chat, and I can do it again if it makes it.
Do it on the LinkedIn Live as well, and I will do that as well.
Okay.
But everyone, you know the deal. Put yourself in gallery mode. For those who are in the Zoom audience, this is the one time where I'm asking you, turn on your videos. Turn on your videos, unmute yourself, please, because I think Annie deserves a big round of applause. Turn on your videos. Woo, Annie! A lot of times people don't turn on their videos, so you can't see the cheering, but thank you guys. Woohoo! Thank you for everyone who's kind of made it also on the, we don't see the hundreds of people who are on the live stream, but thank you for joining today's call. For the folks who are in the Zoom audience, I love the energy. I love the questions and the interactions down below. But thank you all for making it. And thank you, Annie. Once again, round of applause.
Thank you for having me. I have to tell you, I've done hundreds of podcasts and I've never been so aligned with somebody. Like, you are speaking my language, girl. So thank you for having me. I'm so appreciative of all of you and your time. I know how valuable it is. Please reach out to me. I hope we can connect and talk more.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye, Annie. Bye, everyone else. See you at the